Mick and Leah, along with their daughter Ebony and son-in-law Brock, run an autumn calving herd of 240 cows on 160 hectares at Barongarook, southwest of Colac. They use a pasture-based system, and like many dairy farmers, their bottom line is producing milk at the lowest cost. Yet they still manage to consider the environment while doing this. One of the first things they did when they started in 1978 was to establish hardened laneways to make it easier to move the herd. They also find that there is an improvement in herd health and lower cell counts, as the cows' udders are cleaner and there are less problems with the cows' feet. Tired of having boggy areas around the dairy, they've also constructed a hardened area that is used to hold the cows.
The area is sufficient in size enough to comfortably accommodate our 240 cows. Because it's constructed of gravel, it's nice and easy and fairly cheap to initially set up. Fairly easy to keep clean. The straw, hay rings that we put on there for either feeding hay or straw or silage in. Any spillages out of that are easily pushed off into a storage area where all those solids are stored. The rest of it's nice and easily cleaned off into the solids trap, and the effluent then runs out to the ponds. So that's something we constructed about 5 years ago, and it's worked exceptionally well.
Initially, the effluent from the dairy simply flowed out onto the paddocks. Now all effluent from the shed and surrounding area goes through the solid traps into the two-pond system. The first pond is emptied every 3 or 4 years, with the solids disposed of onto the lighter, sandier paddocks. Often these paddocks have recently had a forage crop on them or have a high nutrient demand, such as day paddocks or hay and silage paddocks. Effluent water from the second pond is used for irrigation.
Well, the effluent is a wonderful resource that we've got here at the farm for our benefits. And look, we use it on our brassica crops, our sorghum crops. We have put it on our lucerne, but generally it's put onto the spring crops as we're establishing our summer fodder crops. And certainly a wonderful resource at our fingertips.
The Ryans consider soil tests as an important part of monitoring nutrient balances on paddocks across the farm and undertake regular testing.
The early years, what we done is we just went in and put fairly heavy applications of fertiliser on in the autumn and in the spring. And that became tradition for a while, super and potash autumn and spring with nitrogen dressing through the winter time. And it'd be, I suppose 7 years ago now, we chose to pick particular paddocks, soil test them twice a year, as I said, and then benchmark them against themselves each year. We'd continue to soil test those paddocks and see how they were varying. The night areas, or what we refer to night paddocks, they had P's of 60, 63 and K's of 360. So consequently, after taking the soil test that year, we chose not to put any P and K on those soil areas. Now, for the last 6 years, those paddocks still are reading around that 60 P and around that 300 plus K. Initially, the first year, we'd have saved ourselves about $14,000 in fertiliser. Probably now, 6 years later, we're probably saving $25,000 and still not putting P and K on those 15 night paddocks.
The sandy loam soils are slightly acidic. Lime is used to improve conditions for pasture growth by helping to counter the acidifying effect of ureas and ammonia fertilisers, as well as reducing the toxic effects of aluminium.
So lime usually goes on at the sowing down of new pasture after we take off our brassica or our sorghum crops. We usually cultivate for 2 springs in a row, so we'll take 2 summer crops out of a paddock, and then the following autumn we'll sow down with lime applications to keep our pHs at around 6, where we're quite comfortable with.
The sandy loam soils are also prone to both wind and water erosion. The Ryans try to maintain good pastures and adequate soil cover to reduce the risk of erosion. 8 years ago, they started planting blue gums to prevent wind erosion.
I do recall, sowing turnips three times in the one season on one of these particular paddocks, that the wind would whistle in from that southwest and blow onto the side of the hill and just cut off the very small germinations. And that particular paddock, we made sure that we put shelter belts in there to protect that area, and of course that's worked really well. That paddock's now sown down to pasture and has been there for quite some time.
They've since realised that the tree plantings can provide additional benefits, such as shelter for stock and habitat for native birds. Direct seeding has been used to establish mixed plantings of manna gums, peppermint gums and their associated understory species. Over the past 8 years, they've established approximately 6 kilometres of shelter belts.
Well, initially we were reluctant to plant a lot of trees because we were fairly heavily stocked. This would be, say, 10 years ago. So we were chasing every blade of grass that we could grow. And, of course, then we seen the light and thought, well, we'll try a few. And we put a few plantations in. And Joe's, we've steamrolled on since then. It's been wonderful. You know, as I say, the winter shelter is enormous, but the summer shelter is vital for the cows. The cows shelter under there in the summertime. And providing they can get shade, it's been wonderful. We've seen very little drop in the VAT on those extremely hot days, providing they can get complete shelter under there in the summertime.
A 100 megalitre irrigation dam is used to help the Ryans secure their summer fodder crops. A carefully constructed spillway and trickle pipe prevents scouring and erosion of the dam wall. The dam also provides habitat for the bird life. The streamline was badly eroded, with deep holes and steep, unstable banks. The banks and floor of the stream were reshaped and then planted with kikuyu to stabilise them. Fences were then erected to exclude stock and protect remnant blackwoods. Since fencing, some areas along the banks have regenerated naturally, while other areas were planted using tube stock. The Ryans believe in making things efficient in regards to time and labour input. They try to keep a tight perspective on spending and prioritise what they do. They are mindful that whatever they do fits in with future plans, contributes to the overall business and enhances the farm's natural environment.
Well, the things that we've put into place, our plantations, our fertility management and those type of things, as I say, I think are basic things that most farmers are probably doing today anyway. We're certainly doing nothing special in that area, I wouldn't think. But it works well for us, and I'm pretty sure those type of things would work well for most farmers.